Hello, welcome to, as I'm calling it, the chair. This is actually me recording this for the third time. I am genuinely tired. So we're gonna get through it this time though, all in one take. I've got two things I wanted to talk about actually. There's of course one door closes and another opens. That was the title of this video. But then hiding in the back end of this, I actually also want to talk about updates that we've done to the site that were like this huge, cool revelation, totally unexpected, as it relates to Gemini. There was a competition that Google is having right now that says if you put Gemini into your website or your app, then you can enter into their competition for like winning an electric DeLorean or something, and a bunch of other prizes, stuff that I would immediately sell to be able to fund the company further, but a really good opportunity. And just going ahead with Gemini, we discovered all these really cool things about it that we were not expecting. But I'll talk about that at the end. I would like to mostly focus on the title. So as you may recall, or if you haven't seen, the last video that I made was the most obvious cry for help. It was a desperate cry for help. And that was in the form of someone to assist me with going into the next chapter of my business's development, because I was working with an individual for the last year, a great guy, a towering intellect, a gentleman who has a master's in mathematics and will now go on to teach at a massive junior high school. Mathematics will be teaching, that's what he's teaching when he's there, in China. And I think that's incredible, great adventure, putting to use your skill set. He's gonna stack up cash like you won't believe there, have a great quality of life, and I wish him the best of luck, though he will not need it. He's a proficient dude. But with him moving along, it meant that, yes, I've got the website in a state that I'm really happy with. We've accomplished so much in a year, but also with the towering intellect of this individual, and I've talked to him about all of this. You know, it's good to be transparent and speak to people, because when there is no ill intent, then just saying that plainly is the easiest way to diffuse any kind of misunderstanding. It is incredible what Connor was able to learn and accomplish within a single year and then apply that to our website. I think there are very few people on this planet that could come into a boot camp having just studied prior to that, ended up at the top of the boot camp, and then created what we did by this point. But then there is no replacement for someone who has been developing software for their entire career. And I had a bunch of questions about how could the site develop, what really is a hard stop from us being able to proceed with some sort of functionality that I wanted. Yet, where was the true what we can and cannot do going forward? And the only way you would know that is if you did a cry for help as I did and find someone with the amount of experience that when you ask those questions, you'd know more certainly whether or not you were capable of doing whatever it is that you wanted to do. So, as is often the case, sometimes you can't get what you want, but you might just find you get what you need. And that's what I got. So when I reached out in that previous video, exactly 2 people responded. And those 2 people were the 2 people who had already contacted me before I made the video. So it's funny like that. Life is funny like that. But I even said in that video, I haven't forgotten you guys. I'm just making this because it was a due diligence to say that, well, I am going to follow up with them. Why not cast a broad net and then see if anybody else was interested in the project? I also recognize that I was asking a lot for this sort of experience that we were looking for. That's one thing. Asking for somebody to have that amount of experience, but then be free to, like, you're on, I don't know, a hiatus from whatever work it is that you're doing. You're a freelancer who can fit this into your schedule. It's a big ask. So it's actually not so surprising that with the quite small footprint that I have, this is how many people responded, but it was perfect. So one of the gentlemen has a little less experience, but seems on the artistic side, and we'll see if we can find something for him to do, potentially down the line a bit. But the other, who is now on our company website, so if you want to go over and read his like little blurb there, is Andrew. I had an interview with Andrew when we had a conversation over the course of a couple of hours, and I could tell very quickly, not only did Andrew possess the skill set that I was interested in, but the temperament as well. I think that as much as you know, also how you work is so important. And so I said at the end of the conversation, cards on the table, complete transparency. Andrew, you're the guy we're looking for. I don't want to do any more interviews. If you are interested to work on the project with us, let's go ahead. Let's do this together. Dream a dream with me. And I'm happy to say that Andrew has come on full time. He was in the perfect situation to be able to help. And even in the initial meetings that we've had where I've gotten together, there is Caden Ostermiller. That's he's worked with me on YouTube. I keep saying his name through all the videos I make, where he had like done intro videos for me. He had done clothing designs for me. He had done logos. Caden's then come in and started to work on the website, and we've received so many compliments on the layout and the how succinct it is and how smooth, like to understand the flow of the pages and whatnot, that he's doing great work. So Caden, myself, and Andrew got together and we talked about what can Fantasai 2.0 look like as we go into this next chapter. And every single question that we had, where I said, you know, is this possible? Is this possible? Is this possible? Is this possible? Every every question was met with the answer, yes. So now we were definitely building from, at first, an amount of experience that had to acknowledge where the limitations were. And those, although they're frustrating, like we're limited here, limitations are the mother of creativity very often, where because you have to find creative ways around what you are incapable of at first look being able to do, you come up with some very clever ways to circumvent that impossibility. But now we have no such limitations on us, and with the experience that Andrew brings to the table, we can do all of them. So now actually our vision may suffer from a lack of scale. Actually now we have to say, have we dreamed big enough in terms of what it is that we want to accomplish with the site? And then select very carefully, well, dreaming bigger, darling, exactly what should go into the next version for Fantasai 2.0, for what we're going to do next. And that is very exciting. Rather than going from a position of limitation, going from a position of abundance is satisfying. But you have to be careful with this. You know, I'll hammer this home if only for my own personal reference, that sometimes to have so many options available to you can be just as much something to overcome, because you call it, it's not perfection paralysis, it's like choice paralysis. There's just so many choices that even to consider them all means that you've set yourself back days and hours and weeks because you just can't make a decision. There's too many things to do. I don't think we'll do that. We got these three great minds, or two great minds in me, and one of which, I can't remember if it was in this video or the previous video now, but one of which is Caden, our designer. And so I know a lot of how this comes to be is that the designer says, this would be great, this would be great, this would be great, this would be great. And then our back-end developer would say, that's possible, that's possible, that's possible, that's not, that is not, that is possible. This kind of thing. So we've got a chain of construction, a chain of creativity here. So I don't think that we're going to ever have to get snagged on the fact that now there are no limitations to what we can do. We are, in fact, going to restructure the entire site. So where we had built this on, I think practically, Ruby on Rails. When we went to the boot camp, the thing that they teach you there is Ruby on Rails, and they teach you the coding language Ruby. And it's very specifically because if you don't have a great deal of experience, you can just get up and running very quickly and bam, 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 you're making an app, you're making a website, and that's awesome. But we had Andrew come in, and it was the first person to say this to me, but I was like, yeah, that would make sense for an experienced software developer, engineer. He said, you know, it almost feels like I'm not a programmer anymore. You know, he says that, and that was actually something that a friend had said to me before about using Ruby on Rails and Ruby, but I didn't understand it until now. Ruby takes care of so much of what you're doing that it feels like you are not really in control. You're just sort of guiding it, which makes me chuckle because I still find that stuff incredibly complex, and like, this is a programmer saying that that's not even like really programming. But what this means is that we're going to build it instead in a more modern framework, in a more modern back end. We're going to be using what I was hoping to. We're going to use for the front end, we're going to use React. I was learning about this API. It's called RESTful API, and we're going to use Python in the back end for the coding language. This has the benefit too that, well, it was so impressive. Andrew came in and he was already understanding like, oh, this is how I do this, this, and this, that this is his neck of the woods. It's good that we restructure this way because it is what he is most familiar with, and he's capable of things that people would only imagine in the programming world. So I really feel this was the clearest. I've said this now maybe a dozen times in the course of the developing this business and the software, but never has it so felt like the universe tapping me on the shoulder and being like, there you go, there's your bone. I threw you a bone, a lucky, pure win. Now, don't mess it up, treat it with respect, and keep on going, which I will. So we're gonna restructure the site. With that restructuring comes so much more functionality. There's all sorts of things you can do now because we're going to be doing it with those that I just described rather than Ruby. And I won't go into those details because that's the spice, that's the excitement of the site changing, and when it happens, you can see that happen. But for now, that's as much as I'll lay down in those terms. And as I said, if you want to like go and read the little blurb about Andrew, it's over on the company website, so you're perfectly welcome to check that out. And it's that was pretty Canadian. I even felt that out. It is going to be such a new horizon to go over now. Nothing wrong with the site in its current form. I'm really happy with it. Tikyo Sam has been doing live streams of it and really running it through his paces, which is great. And he's provided me with a spreadsheet of his feedback. So I got responsibilities right now. Most of them are get much more feedback from our user base to say, hey guys, the gloves are off. You can tell me anything that you want in this now. And it's not going to be that I say, you know what, it's just out of necessity that I have to say no since we don't have that skill set. We can do it all now. So I'm going to be collecting a bunch of info, preparing with both Caden and Andrew, the whole new design of the site. Some will stay the same, of course, but it's just going to be this expression night and day again because we can add so much functionality that, well, it will be at its core still fantasai. It's going to be, it's the Pokemon has evolved at this point. That's what it's truly going to be. So it's just crazy to me at every moment. If you keep going, if you don't give up, if you focus on the positivity, if you look for people with a common vision, you find them. And this is whether it's that you like playing Dungeons and Dragons, this is whether you want to go to another country, this is anything. It's, so many of these like positivity gurus, go into this expression where it's like whatever you focus on, well, our brains find patterns, and so they'll confirm whatever you're looking for. You look for something negative, you're going to find a bunch of negative stuff. You look for positive, you're going to notice a bunch of positive stuff. And so in this way, it can be that depression will lie to us because it comes cloaked in reason and logic because you've examined it and come up with a reason that seems rational, but that's only because you were examining negative things. I know I'm even repeating myself in other videos, but there's some things that I think are so useful that they bear repeating, that it is worth saying to people, focus on the positive. Life, except for a chosen few, I think ends up really being a series of peaks and valleys, and it can destroy people too. This is the whole thing as well, is that I have now lived enough, I've seen enough people go through enough things that what often gets discounted as platitudes, they're not. They're useful. They're really helpful because people who are like, oh, I'll figure it all out myself. And, I don't need anything to get me through the next challenge. I've seen all those people get steamrolled by life. And so I would rather instead try and offer these encouraging things that have made a difference in my life, and I truly believe could make a difference in yours, depending on the context of your life. Not saying that everybody is like that. I also know the odd people where I'm like, just worked out for you, didn't it? And that's cool too. Nothing wrong with that. That the complexity of the universe is such that everything can exist means that everything does. You see the good and the bad in every single expression possible. So I suppose that could wrap up the one door closes, another opens. It's that Connor is off on this great adventure. I can't wait to hear how it goes for him. And then in an insane turnaround, I was able to, since the release of that video over the course of the weekend, meet with someone who was chosen by God. No, the great spaghetti monster, God, whoever, universe, the Tao, whatever it is that we have now met with Andrew, and he completely transforms what we're going to be capable of doing. Very grateful to Andrew, and it's already been so much fun working with him. He's extremely proactive. Like I'll constantly get, I think this is an idea, I think we can do this, I think we can do this, what do you think of this? It's just the best. Like, I'm so jacked on this whole project that to have mirrored enthusiasm for it is just like num num num, great inspiring feelings. So that's really cool. So thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everybody watching. It's on to the next chapter. It's going to be so cool to see how this goes in the next several months. And we've already set, let's say, deadlines, aspirational deadlines for where we want the restructuring of the site to be, to adding in the new features, to the new design, to all this stuff. We've been thorough as we go. Now the thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because this is so cool. This was the last thing that Connor, again the previous architect, chief technical officer prior to Andrew, had done on the site. So we put in Gemini. All right, so let's start with first the criticisms of Google's AI and why we actually thought, we're like, we'll try this out, but we don't really have the highest hopes for it giving us a better result than what we have currently. And perhaps to create context for you to understand why it would be better, let's build a little picture for you. What was OpenAI's AI doing for us instead of Gemini beforehand? So on the website as it exists now, it is to create art assets for tabletop RPGs, be that Vampire the Masquerade, Warhammer, Dungeons and Dragons, probably most of all Dungeons and Dragons. That's kind of like the big towering winner of all of them. It's creating these art assets, and one way that we could make our assets unique and like nothing else you could find on any other website or any other art generator that you would find was that I love playing the game Magic the Gathering, which is this like competitive card game where you choose a series of like colors of magic, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. And on these cards are a name and flavor text, and you have all kinds of representations of the cards. You have spells, they're all spells, but you have creatures, you have instants, that's like a spell you can use instantly. You have a sorcery, all these different subclasses of spells, but they'll have a name, some kind of like name at the top, whether that's their character name or the spell name, like the instant that I mentioned, or the sorcery. And then they will have the rules by which you can use them, and then flavor text at the bottom. So I thought, we're not going to put any sort of rules onto this art because the rules are already dictated by the game that you're playing. Again, be that Vampire the Masquerade or Dungeons and Dragons, something like this. But wouldn't it be cool, and wouldn't it be a distinguishing factor compared to, again, repeating myself, any other site that would do this, to have a cool flavor text get generated for this art, and also that the art be made by that flavor text. So you kind of have this circular generation that's occurring. So on our site, we were using the OpenAI large language model to create the flavor text and the name for this subclass of handout that we're making on the website. And we thought, okay, if Google's got this competition, why don't we give that task to Gemini? Because Gemini could, in theory, create that flavor text. Like if it was a monster, it would be like the backstory of that monster. Or if it was a weapon, it would be a description of the weapon. Or if it was a place, we call them landmarks, it would be a description of the landmark and the name. Now, could Gemini potentially do that? And then we can enter into the competition. So let's say this, before we started, you can use these AIs for all sorts of different reasons. OpenAI has been, the ChatGPT has been a direct constructive companion to my building this website the whole time. Whether it was from the beginning of it where I was brainstorming what I wanted the website to do, to teaching me how at first when I was studying for the boot camp to be a teaching assistant to the boot camp, to once I had finished the boot camp that the amount that I used OpenAI for the front end design and like how much time is saved by saying, all right, on this page, I need 3 divisions, left to right, create them in a flex box and have this kind of style on them and blah, blah, blah. Even if OpenAI didn't give you the perfect HTML code for that, it's enough that you can like grab what is useful and throw it in. So I've used it for so many things. It is the most encouraging, amoral friend that I have ever had. It's so, so helpful. But you would then take one of these different skill sets that it has and you could compare that in Gemini. So I can only report from Connor's experience, but that's what I'll report because he used it specifically for these reasons. He compared Gemini to OpenAI or ChatGPT 4.0 in its current iteration. First of all, he used it for mathematics, and that was because he's going to be going to China real soon and wanted to create some, I don't even know, I'm not a math guy. So he was using it for math, and he said that it was, now I need to use, what is the technical term? Dog shit. That Gemini was horrible at math compared to OpenAI and made way more mistakes, than ChatGPT. Brutal. And then another way in which Connor went and compared the Gemini Google AI to ChatGPT 4.0 was that while I use the AI with GPT to do front-end design, Connor would actually use it for back-end coding, where it was like, do this, get an array, blah, 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 pick this subject, blah, blah, all the crazy logical pyramids, labyrinths that get constructed in the back end. When he compared how you could code in the back end using GPT compared to Gemini, it was a similar experience, that Gemini was not so good. And it wasn't good at all. He said he would always return to using GPT rather than using Gemini for the back end coding. It made way more errors. It didn't present information as well. Like even if it was just suggesting things, it could be quite terse. It cut off much sooner. It wouldn't elaborate on its reasoning. And having failed those two, he was like, well, I don't know how well it's going to handle if I do something now creative with it, because that's what we're doing. It's not mathematics. It's not coding. It's creative. It's like, what kind of name are you going to come up with for a squirrel warrior? And what kind of flavor text are you going to create for our half-orc barbarian pacifist? Turns out, here's the twist, Gemini is excellent at creative tasks and far, far better. And we have some absolutely concrete reasons why that is so. So for example, here's a challenge that we had with using ChatGPT when we were creating these cards with the names and flavor text. If you made, for example, I like to anthropomorphize animals into different characters. Say, for example, you made 2 cat warriors. The first cat warrior that GPT would spit out for you with a name and flavor text, its name would be Mr. Fuzzy. And then you would say, you know what, I'm not done. I need to make one more cat warrior. You'd make another cat warrior, write into your prompt, say I want it to do this, this, and this. And then the AI would generate it for you. And what's the name? Mr. Fuzzy. And we noticed that ChatGPT was repeating names, and we were just like, why would you do that? So there was a quite elegant solution, and I believe I suggested this, where it's not that grand, but whenever I can make a contribution, I'm happy. So I said, couldn't we just tell the AI to make a list of 50 names and then choose one at random whenever we create one of these cards? And in that way, we could circumvent that repetition. And Connor thought, well, maybe we can. And it worked. So you would create this array of 50 different names with the AI. The AI would then select one of those 50. And then whenever you created a card, it was fine. It was original. We always had a different name. Gemini does not require this. If you create two cat warriors, you're going to get Mr. Fuzzy, and Mr. Fuzzy strokes his whiskers gently. Probably much better than what I said. But the point is that Gemini will create completely distinct names every single time that it is prompted with creating something, even if it was a sort of similar prompt to the last one. So evidently, it is much more creative in that way. So what's a really cool knock-on effect of this? Well, when you create that array with ChatGPT and you get those 50 names and then you have to select one from it, to create 50 names and select one, that takes time. It's not a lot of time, but it's certainly much, much longer than if you don't have to do it at all, as was the case with Gemini. And so we had a massive, well, not a massive, let's not exaggerate. We had a significant improvement in performance when generating the cards, which is just a huge win for the user, because the longer that you sit there when you're making your piece of art, the more annoyed you will become, the more disinterested you will become, because you want to make something, you want to see the result. You don't want to sit there for 30 minutes just watching a loading bar going across the screen. So that was huge. What's the next knock-on effect that we noticed as a result of this? Well, it wasn't just the names that improved when we did this, but additionally, the flavor text it has more concepts now. Its humor lands a little bit more when it tries to be humorous. The quality of the descriptions of the flavor text describing whatever kind of card you created, whether that was a character, an equipment piece, an item, a travel or transport, like a steed or a landmark, the descriptions have improved. Why does that matter? Well, one, when you read it, you're going to enjoy it more because it's better written. But two, when you are making images with DALL-E, and that's the AI we're using to create the images for the cards, the quality of that image is better and worse and more and less accurate depending on the quality of input that you put into it. So actually, having increased the quality of the flavor text on the cards, what we're seeing is an improvement in the actual art that gets generated. So, wow, not only is the art better, but the performance is faster, the flavor text is more flavorful. I'm actually of the opinion, I think the names are even better too, and that's it, just like choosing one every time and going rather than creating this array. Like, I made a squirrel warrior the other day, and I can't remember, but it was like, it gave him a title and then like clicky-clack, or like some sort of like, it was almost creating its own like language, or what it imagined would be the language of the squirrels to name the thing. So that was very, very impressive. Now, the final aspect here that I really like is that while GPT-4o is increasingly cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to use, Gemini is, for all intents and purposes for us right now, it's free. It doesn't cost anything at all. The amount that you put in and your inputs and outputs, it's zero. Now, saving for us, like, I don't know, a cent on a card or something for each time in our overhead that one gets generated, probably not a big deal now, but you can imagine if we get more people onto the platform generating art and this scales up, then that would be massive, massive savings for us. And when you are entirely self-funded, as I am with this project, then you're really appreciative of when you can reduce costs. So totally unexpected and really, really exciting. And it really felt pioneering again, where I was like, how many people have been testing Dolly image generation as compared to using like GPT 4.0 versus Gemini. Like this is right at the cutting edge of innovating and trying new things and seeing how they interact with each other. It's so much fun. I feel like I'm a part of one of these fantastic sci-fi books I've read as I was growing up. It's so cool. So that's it. That's the video. It's Gemini has gone in. That's been really cool. It is that we've got this fantastic new developer. Welcome to the team, Andrew. He's doing great work for us already. I guess one thing, maybe, you know, it would have been more savvy if I had mentioned this at the beginning of the video, but I'll mention it now anyways. One of the things we have also done on the site, because we were like, how do we encourage more people to get on here? It's all about just experiencing fantasai right now rather than, hey, we're about stacking cash. We're really not. I just want people to use it. We gotta get more feedback. We gotta make it better. So simply, we have reduced all the prices big time. And I actually think this is more important than reducing the prices. Anyone who creates a new account, the on-site currency is called Embers, and that's what allows you to generate art on the site. All new accounts now, when you create them, come with 60 Embers, auto-loaded into your account, which is the equivalent of being able to make 6 pieces of art for free. So now anybody who comes to the site and anybody who tries it out, you can do so and experience fully what the site is capable of doing for $0. And if after that time you're like, no, that was pretty sweet, I like that, then you can continue with it. So there you go. You've been filled in. Many more videos to come. Lots of exciting twists and turns in the road as we proceed onwards, but I'll be sure to let you know of those as well. I hope you're doing good. Stay hydrated. Hug the ones you love. That's it.